Hey everyone, welcome to Functional Meatheads. I'm Mark DeSalvo. Is this thing
There?
on? What?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Uh,
Now can you hear me?
yeah. What'd you do?
Well, we're broadcasting.
Ah, okay. Well, well, well.
I didn't do anything. I think you had your sound off.
Well, what I did is I took off my speakers, but maybe it took a while because it froze or something.
How dare you, sir? You messed up our intro.
It's all good, son. We're a forgiving universe.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to Functional Meatheads. We'll do this again. I'm Mark DeSalvo.
And I'm Forlan Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us for another week. It's always fun to have little things like that. I was thinking to myself earlier that the biggest pain in the ass, and we actually devoted a podcast to this topic kind of peripherally. I can never say that word, but
For pain in the asses.
well, no. But the thing that kind of gets to me is that when I embark on a new project for myself, and oftentimes for people I train as well, it's usually multiple things we get going at the same time. So when something starts to work, I'm never quite sure what exactly is making it work, or if it's the convergence of all of these things, or like which is probably the case. But there's sometimes like with real acute little things, like where I just say to myself, why is it that this is like X is working? Is it? But I can't pinpoint it to a bunch of things. And the reason I say this
What
is
are you
I'll give
talking
you an
about?
example. I'm sorry.
I'm a little lost. Specify. What do you mean?
What I'm saying is that well, that means everyone else is probably lost. They can't
Can
understand
you
my
be
babble. Sounded
specific?
better in my head. But what I'm
Specific.
talking about is that I started I started jujitsu about however long ago it was, almost 9 months, whatever it is. And when I started, I was getting a lot of kind of knee pain, and it was the kind of knee pain that came from what I knew what it came from. I knew it came from um, having problems with my hip abductors. Like almost everything I tried to strengthen it just never could quite get it enough. Like I would get really strong at that whatever exercise was supposed to help it, but it never ended up helping it like, all the way. Like it was kind of a nagging thing. So then I started doing jujitsu, and as I was doing it, and as you're putting people in your guard, which is basically like you're wrapping your legs around their waist and you're squeezing, so you're using those hip muscles. I thought to myself, this is going to be really good for my hips. And then, and sure enough, I was right. But also around that time, about 9 months ago, is when I started riding, like cycling, when I started biking, and uh, I kind of wrote biking off as anything that was going to help my hips, but flash forward to this past weekend. I went on my first bike ride in 2 months since my injury, and it went really well. But as I'm riding, as I was kind of getting more fatigued into the ride, my hip adductors were on fire. Like I really felt them working. And I thought to myself, huh, was it jujitsu or the cycling that I started 9 months ago that healed the knee problem? Or was it both? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. There you go.
And that's like the $1 million question that you and I are always asking. Like I remember you've given the example, like you're not feeling well or you've got a problem with X, and then you start doing probiotics, start doing this, start doing that, and you're like, well, which one of it is like 2 months later? You're like, well, which one was it that helped, or which one made me lose weight? I mean, and yeah, the answer is probably all of them. But at the same time, I have almost a hard time believing that because I can be such a tweakhead with numbers and science and stuff that usually I can isolate and find things. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or I can find a chain reaction.
Well, it's kind of like the measurement thing that, quantum physics, they're saying like you don't see atoms or molecules until you look for them. And then when you do look, they looked inside of an atom that's completely empty. So that
Mhm.
leads me to believe like the different theories on, you know, is it the mind? I think it's the mind. I think the mind really does it. Like we've done a couple podcasts on similar subjects, but this is one that would bring it all together. It's more talking about how, is it the pre-workout, post-workout intra workout that is helping these guys get ripped, or is it the fact that they're doing these things and thinking, I'm going to get ripped, I'm going to get ripped, I'm going to get ripped? So they're working the mind like in a waking meditation that things are going to work out. So it kind of follows suit. Or
Right.
is it you kind of doing things and thinking about like, okay, my hip, you're conscious of your hip and you're conscious of working it out, but you never know. Like you're learning with your back. It could be you working your back that's making your stuff be better. Like the more I see it, like the more I think about it now, especially this weekend, I just meditated a lot on like exercise, working out. What is this? What is that? What's going on in my body? My weaknesses. I started making a list of the stuff that I needed to fix, and then you start thinking. The whole comprehensive thing is like you sat. How many years did you sit at doing the job before you became a trainer?
Uh, that would have been from about 2010 to almost 2 years.
So that was like a lot of sitting, right? Serious amount of sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I had to jump up a lot because I was kind of like I was a runner. But yeah, I mean, on its worst days, yeah, you were sitting. It's a sitting intensive job. Not as bad as it could be, like an accountant or something. But
yeah. Well, I just think it's the years that people do sitting. Let's take into account school too, grade school, high school,
oh,
college,
hell yeah.
and then a big job. Like that's a lot of years that you have to expect to be undoing that sitting. Most people want to kind of fix it. That's why standing desks help out so much because you're taking away. You're not compounding the sitting by sitting and doing workouts to compound the sitting, etc. Like a vicious cycle.
Right.
Um, but again, the whole thing that I started doing those little tweaky exercises that I got from another trainer that are meant to turn everything on, even the assisting muscles,
Hmm.
mostly the assisting, the smaller muscles, turning everything on, things that are usually weak in people. And you kind of learn that it kind of opened up other injuries in me, not big ones, but I started noticing more deficiencies and then better, they got better. So I just started getting, oh, okay, this is more of a whole body thing, and it kind of made me think like, something's going on in my shoulder, but that could totally affect my hips or my squat. They say if a person squats with a low back, they can't really keep their back up. It's because they're missing space in their ankles. See,
Right.
that goes from back to ankles. I would never have guessed that or thought about that. I mean, I've heard it before and everything, but like specifically, you're missing space in your ankles. So it's a weird thing that
It
I
gives.
guess my big answer is it doesn't matter as long as you fixed it. And then the bigger answer, I know it does matter in the bigger sense of things, but the bigger answer is sometimes I find that if a client has like your external rotators, right, your abductors,
Hmm.
I have like 20 exercises for that, and never does it fix until I have a client like clamshells. Let's take a specific clamshells, right? You know which exercise that is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I could do 1,000 of those, and I never really saw uh, improvement in my clients until I started integrating it with like reverse lunges with one band around one knee to externally rotate it. The
Right.
full-on integration.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's
Yeah,
the thing is like it's you have to there's like a chemistry and alchemy to it, like you just said.
yeah.
Clamshells alone, for me too, never worked. I
Well,
mean,
even to prove the point further, you sent me an article recently about a guy with fixing knees, right?
right. Hmm.
He even says, "Is like, look, you can foam roll, do all the stuff you need to get the tissue right, everything. You do that. I can strengthen that specific area, but the other thing is you changing the habit of the way you walk, and
Right.
that to me is the meditation of it all. So that's separate from the working it out. It's you thinking when you're walking on the street or when you sit down from the subway, when you get up from the subway. How are you externally rotating your hips? Are you doing that on a regular basis? Changing that habit of going from no mindfulness of I'm just walking to all right, I got to make sure my hips stay out. I'm gonna do biking. I'm gonna ride the bike today. I have to make sure my hips stay out.
Right, right. Totally.
it's all very. It all comes together when the person learns to kind of keep it together, and you can't take just the mind. I can't just give somebody 1,000 clamshells every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and even though that in theory that'll help it be stronger, like I've strengthened this one area, that's what I was supposed to do because it said this was weak. It still doesn't mean it's going to work.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you'll hear people talk sometimes about think it's called motor learning. It's a
Yeah.
type of way that like a physical therapist or a trainer might like reorient you to moving a certain way.
Uh,
And it kind of fell out of favor in those circles because it wasn't sexy enough. But I think it really goes to show like it's very true. It relates to what you just said because there's like three phases of it. There's like a learning phase where you're literally learning how to walk again. We'll use walking for example. Like if you're walking kind of bow-legged, maybe you're not engaging your those external rotators in the proper way. The first cue is learning.
mhm.
And after the learning period, I think it's called the associative phase.
Yeah, I remember this from training school.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. And so the associative phase. So in other words, you are recognizing you're doing something wrong and you're actively correcting it, but it's not second nature. And then the third phase, I don't remember what it's called, but that's when it becomes committed to whatever it is. And I think that there's a lot to that because I think that motor learning is a scientific term for mindfulness if you think about it, you know.
I found this guy's videos on YouTube, and he's actually pretty good. Like he's an
Whose
Australian guy, but I found that he's more like
whose videos?
his name's I don't want to give him any pub yet. We'll do it later. But he's
Wait, the guy I sent you or who are you talking about?
I found a video. I was just I don't know what I was looking up what specific exercise that was. God, what was it? It was just one of those ones like, oh, what's that exercise? You go on YouTube and you randomly
Right.
find some guy, and then you look at his videos, and he ends up having like a lot of really good videos for a lot of good videos. And I say his exercises are like they're full on body strength. He uses kettlebells and stuff, but not like the way you're thinking. But his
Right.
exercises are like the bridge between DeFranco and rehab.
Right.
He's got regression for this, for that. Like they're really cool. Actually, I'm like, oh, this is really good. I'm gonna use these. So
You have to send me
yeah,
these. I'm curious to see
yeah,
them.
he doesn't have that many videos, which is I'm happy because I could just go through them all. And I've already been stealing a bunch just to kind of throw them into my your repertoire because it gets stale after a while. Um, what did he have? He had a good one. But he calls those RNT,
Hmm.
something neuromuscular training. I'm gonna look it up right now. So I was gonna say because
Right.
it's very good. Let's see, RNT therapy, and it has to do with something to therapy. Well, that's radionuclides, not it. Reactive reactive neuromuscular training.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Um, so let's
Yeah.
see. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just think that it's it's something that's worth thinking about because I think that it kind of like you said. I think you really you hit it on the head with one thing you said kind of gives new meaning to the whole, it's going to get worse before it gets better because it's like once you start moving things properly, like you're going to see what other compensations your body created to move you daily because if you were moving so inefficiently and poorly and painfully, once you start to correct all that, you're going to have to undo other injuries. So like if you for instance if you have um, an anterior pelvic tilt. Well, you're gonna have to work on that. But as you work on that, you're gonna notice you have a forward head, which means you also probably have internally rotated shoulders, which also means that you have extremely tight pecs. So it's like, all of those different things will ail you at different points in that recovery.
And I think that's the frustrating point as a trainer that does this type of stuff. People don't understand is like you're probably going to get injured between fixing all these things, and hopefully it won't be a severe injury, but you're going to notice, oh man, I'm tweaking this. Like, remember the guy we were talking to on Saturday? He's getting these little injuries because he's finding more space, but he doesn't have the strength to fulfill that space, or not strength. What do you call it?
Range of motion, mobility.
Yeah, I mean, he's finding all that new stuff, but he doesn't have. I don't want to say strength. He just doesn't have the
Well, yeah,
fire. The firing is not there. And again, let me say what this is.
yeah,
The RNT program is designed specifically to restore synchrony and synergy of muscle firing patterns. Um, Reactive neuromuscular training allows the clinician to bridge the gap between the achievement of clinical-based goals and the return to athletic competition. The possible effects of RNT on the central nervous system programming to establish appropriate reflex response and functional stability at the joint will be explored. So it's basically what we're saying. It's like learning to fire stuff right, and not just let the body fit. So it's interesting. Like, you know, as I was doing these last few weeks, I've been doing all these little not corrective exercises, corrective warm-ups to kind of get everything to be firing. And to be honest with you, a lot of them are very much either a lot of them are either somewhere near the zones. So that, you know, a lot of them are similar to one in zone one in zone two, the Paul check zones. They're
Yeah.
just a little bit different. So I'm like, I wonder if they're tied into the chakras. And a lot of them are tied into the chakras.
Oh yeah,
So
I'm sure.
yeah, so it's very like it all. Even that you can you can cover or camouflage the hooey or the woo woo all you want. In the end, it all goes back to that, you know, in a very good way. Whether you need it when you're 40 or when you need it like you have a serious injury when you're 25, you know.
Yeah, but
Prevents.
even to me, the chakras have always been able, like, in other words, to me, they always kind of have aligned with science because the location of them all are all places that you need proper function, basically, you know, to be
Yeah, what that video. We'll talk about this next week. But in that video, they say that how vital those places are because they have a lot of harmony, and as well as there's actually physical locations. Each of those chakras has a physical location on Earth.
interesting.
Yeah, I was like, well, that's gotta be a cool vacation to be like, I'm gonna hit all the places where the chakras are said to.
That would be pretty cool. You
Yeah.
know, there's a guy who has a really good blog. As I've been preparing for that CSCS test, he has a blog on preparation, and he's an engineer. Like his background was in engineering, like that's what he went to school for. And
Uh,
he wrote a book, like an ebook, and it's actually really good. And it's just on preparing for the test. And he points out that in our bodies, there's all of these really strange symmetrical coincidences, or maybe you don't believe they're coincidences. But he was talking about how it's like there's four muscles that make up the quads and four muscles that make up the hamstrings. Three of the quad muscles cross both the hip and the knee, but only and then only one only crosses the knee, I think. But then on the hamstrings, it's the opposite. Three don't, one does. And like he said that there's endless amounts of like attachments in agonist and antagonist muscles, like that you can see the symmetry on. So it's like kind of like the chakras, like you said. It's like there's a lot of harmony that like you probably can locate the chakras on the world. You know,
yeah, and
it's
I think RNT reactive that type of stuff is key to getting back to an injury. Because what goes first is like the body's going to try to protect itself, and like you said, you know, I bought that book called what is it called? It's called Structures: Why Things Don't Fall Down. And I've been reading a couple chapters, and it's all like you think it's about building a bridge. It's about personal training and the body. Like the way every time I read something in there, I'm like, wow, it's all about the body. You know,
wow, that's pretty deep.
body's a structure. It's a pretty awesome structure, man. It's like a robot. Everybody's trying to build a robot. Well, we have robots. Us, you know, we just have robots with souls and minds, and you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
very, very, very
It's
weird.
amazing because it's like a self-correcting robot that like can correct, can correct and correct until like it can't, which that can't point is pretty, you know, like you have to push it pretty hard to fail, you know?
Dude, think about all the stuff. When I was bad, I ate so much crap, like terrible. I ate like fast food 3 times a day. You know, ice cream before bed. It was just really, really bad. And you think like the body would just give out. Now it just give out a little bit in terms of like you can't eat that stuff anymore because you hit your limit. But it's pretty awesome. Like once you know, we've had clients that were like, well, this guy's in the old like this guy's pretty bad. And then once you start get them eating right, just eating right, like everything falls into place and they lose weight, they feel good. You know, it's just what the new world, the new nobody's normal, man. No, you can't tell me the success of all these sandwich places, pizza places, all this stuff that's successful. And this is something I want to do my you know my article on, but we'll talk about that later. Is that the new normal is just this one existing thing that it's so weird. It's such a disconnect from anything that people don't. Again, it boils down. People don't know that they're inflamed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Because
I
you
never,
almost don't
I
know until
never,
you remove it.
yeah, I never knew how it felt. Now I know I can feel inflammation in my stomach the minute, like 20 minutes after having a bagel, boom, boom, I'm huge. And then about 4 hours after having the bagel, my joints are like swollen. You know, I just feel it. I'm like, oh, never again. You know, I
Yeah,
can't do that
exactly.
stuff. I come to the point where I can't do that stuff back to back. So like Saturday and Sunday, I'm like, nope, just one bagel and that's it. Tradition. So it's very weird how we kind of know. That's why if everybody knew how it felt to feel that bagel burn or that pizza burn, they would they would you wouldn't have 3 bagels a week, 4 bagels a week. It's because you wake up every morning, you have a half a bagel, and you think you're being healthy, but here's half a thing of inflammation. And if you knew what it did to
Here's a
yourself,
half a dose of inflammation.
yeah, right. You have to clean up for 2 weeks to be able to feel that again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. It's like, what do we? Is it just become about habit? Is it really literally about habit?
I think I think habit has a lot to do with it because I think about when you get a new client, and I've thought about this a lot. When a new client that's going to give you some resistance, because some people will come to you and they're ready, like they have like a rock bottom that they've hit already, and that's why they're at you, and they're like, I'm in your hands 100%. But most people fall in the other category of they're going to be skeptical about between 5% of what you say and 90% of what you say.
Yeah,
And
most people in New York are skeptics.
right. And consider for a second though that most of what people will argue with you about is like daily ritual stuff that like they've come to like kind of hold on to about themselves. And that half a bagel and yogurt in the morning could be one.
And
That in other words, they don't want you tell them right you're telling them right off the bat, don't eat that bagel because it's inflaming you and you don't need it and you're eating a bunch of mush that's been pasteurized to the point of not really doing anything for you but further inflame you. But in their head all they hear is, you know, I have to break my morning ritual. I love going to that diner. I go with my boyfriend every morning, or I go with my best friend every morning, or whatever it is. Or I love seeing Carlos, the guy at the bodega. Like
yeah,
it's a habit they don't want to break, and I get that because I remember my kind of journey, like the way you talk about how when you were really unhealthy. Mine started a lot younger, and I had it. I remember in as like a younger teenager like my mom just kind of like whipping me into shape with that stuff, like just saying to me like, well, you can change it now and it's a lot easier to change these things now. And me thinking to myself like, well, I don't want to change because I like picking up Ben and going to Jack in the Box and I like doing this. So I'm sure there's a lot of habit involved with it.
Jack in the Box breakfast.
No, I used to get I never liked Jack in the Box actually. I always went it was the first one that came to my brain.
Uh,
Um,
they have really
because my
good
buddy
topping breakfast. It was really bad.
No, I used to get McDonald's breakfast. That was the worst, man. I used to get that. I think I had McDonald's breakfast 5 days a week for a year when I was like 13 or
Oh,
14.
what did you get?
Uh, bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
Oh,
I
they
know,
have
man.
bacon that's in a circle.
I know. No, 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 no. The bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit had bacon strips, not an
Oh,
egg McMuffin.
oh, yeah, you're right. I'm trying to think. They had bacon in a circle. I don't remember. I used to get
Yeah,
this.
that
Man,
was
I
the Canadian bacon.
I got the sausage McMuffin like 3 months ago, and I was in bed for like 3 hours going,
You didn't
oh.
tell me about that. How dare you?
It was really. When I went home on vacation.
Ah, that's awful.
Let me try it, and then I was like, oh, it's the worst. I just was waiting for it to come out of my body. I was like, this is the worst.
The
It's
bacon,
so
egg, and
much
cheese.
sodium. I was so thirsty. It's so bad. It's so bad. And you're like, ugh, I can't do this anymore. Even though it tastes good when you're hungover.
Well, McDonald's sales are plummeting. They're having
Yeah,
a
I
problem.
was talking about this because Chipotle's is on the rise, and I'm like, well, you know what? Chipotle is equally as unhealthy in different ways.
Yeah,
If you can't
exactly.
stay, if you can't, I don't know. I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna say it's better than McDonald's. Will
Yeah,
I say?
we won't go down that wormhole.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's healthier because I don't. If somebody has gluten intolerance, or it's only healthy if you make the right decisions when you go in there.
Yeah, you
And,
have the
and to be honest with you, you could go to McDonald's and make healthy decisions as well. You know,
I don't know about that.
I mean, I can go in there and get a salad,
Yeah, you could do that. That's true.
and I
That
can go to Chipotle and get a bowl, their version of a salad too, right? But if I put, if I put all the wrong things in the bowl, then I might as well get a Big Mac at the, you know what I mean, in the other place. So I was thinking about, I'm like, they're just gonna have to rebrand. They're just gonna have to call it something else, or MCDs or something. I don't know, something, because people just associate that with like nasty, vile health.
well, the
And they kind
problem,
of did it by going so cheap too, like 99-cent menu.
right? Well, you know what's gonna happen is I think McDonald's, like I'll make a music industry analogy here. McDonald's was booming because uh and had these insanely high numbers in sales because, like you said, it was so cheap. So instantly you took in the people who were looking for a deal or could afford nothing else. So like you're always probably going to have those people as their customers. And then
Yeah.
next and then the next thing was is that people weren't as health conscious in the 90s and before. So
Or
you had other people believing that it was okay to eat these things. So now you suddenly don't have those people who are okay. And then the trendy people who maybe used to like burgers but now like quinoa or something, you know,
yeah.
you shaved off a lot of customers. You're always going to have the people who can't afford anything else
Mhm.
and the people looking for a deal who care about their health like very little. McDonald's will always have that and probably always be able to survive on that. But they're not going to have these insane 90s music industry type numbers anymore. Like, in other words, it's impossible, you know?
Did I tell you, me and a friend of mine, we made homemade Big Macs. I
No.
think I did it on all the past. It was good. But it was $50 for like four Big Macs.
Oh, jeez.
Like grass-fed meat, organic mustard, everything to make everything. Because McDonald's put out like a 3-minute video on how to make a Big Mac at home,
Uh-huh.
which I think is good marketing. That helps. And we went to Whole Foods and bought everything organic, everything healthy, everything. And I thought it tasted really good. I thought it tasted like a fresh, obviously a little bit different, but I thought it tasted really good. My friend didn't think it tasted the same. I thought it tasted the same. I thought it was good. I was like, good. We paid $50 for four Big Macs to make a healthy version.
Yeah, I mean, well, what is that? You got 50 divided by 4. That's an 11. What is that?
Wait,
$12 Big
I
Mac?
think two for two on Thursdays, right at McDonald's.
Yeah, 2 for 2. That's insane.
Can't beat that.
But yeah,
Uh,
I think going back to what you were saying though, I think that it really is habit. I think that um, habits are hard to form and they're hard to break, but once you get good ones going, like here's an example. This is going to sound silly, but you know, I'm so in the habit of preparing the same lunch every day and eating it every day that I don't really even think about food until about 4 o'clock because I've basically just automated my food choices and they're good ones. And it's like that's one way you can make habit work for you really well, you know?
that and I love that idea because as soon as I started doing a warrior diet or like just kind of grazing during the day and then coming home and eating a big meal, and today was thrown off because I had to take another backup session that I wasn't supposed to take later on. So I only grazed. I had today, so from 5 a.m. until 5 a.m. until 4:45, I only had two hard-boiled eggs. This is spread out throughout the day. Two hard-boiled eggs, four handfuls of nuts, one banana, and probably like a cup and a half of vegetables, mushroom, like a medley of vegetables. So I was starving when I get home, and I kind of really appreciate that second meal. But what it does is, I'm not fasting or anything like that. I'm just kind of playing around with a warrior version. But what it does is it changes your relationship with food.
Yeah.
I start going, okay, am I really hungry right now, or is my stomach just cleaning itself out? Because I cheat on the weekends, so Mondays is always tough. Like my stomach, and I know that's my stomach cleaning itself out. So it's I like it for the fact that I don't think of food as the same thing anymore. I just
Right.
think I really start thinking like I'm a gardener and I'm cultivating the bacteria in my stomach, so I can't have that burrito even though I want a burrito. I'll have it on the weekend, or I want to just get my stomach. I want more days of the good stuff in there just to kind of get that garden going, and then now I don't really need as much charcoal as I used to. I can actually skip charcoal sometimes and be like, oh, it's not killing me because my body has these defenses to kind of mitigate whatever I'm eating. So it's
Yeah.
very. I think people need to, and I know it's corny and cheesy to say, but you need to change your relationship to food. There was a point in time when I was eating that way that I had no idea. This is back when I was eating, but I had no idea that not every meal needed to taste like X. Not every meal needs to taste like good, like super good and everything. But eventually, when you change that taste thing into like, oh, my body's craving some broccoli or asparagus or uh, onion or mushroom. Like, you change that craving into it's less from the mouth and more from the body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that happens. That definitely happens. I've had people tell me that, and it's happened to me too.
Yeah, you start going, oh, I want some French fries. Well, you want something that tastes salty and is starchy. But now it's more like, oh man, I need some food. I need to eat something because I'm tired. But it's not like I want something that tastes good. I don't do that anymore. Like on the way home, I was starving and I go, I want a burrito. What I really wanted the burrito was because I wanted the sense of being full and a
Right.
burrito extreme. So I I exercised some willpower and I just got home and I had a really good meal from some meatloaf that I had. So it was actually a really good meal. So I wasn't too worried about that. But it was close. I even walked all the way. I went to the other station to go get a burrito. I'm like, nah, let's get something good in there, and you'll feel just as good as soon as you get home. So it was more me, my relationship food changed to like I'm voracious. I need something right now. To there's no difference in time if I go here now or the other place. All my goal is to feel full. So it doesn't matter what I feel full with. You know.
Right. Totally.
I changed. That was a big habit. I'm like, okay, that's a big habit. Because normally I want it, I eat it, and then I deal with the consequences later. And it's actually gotten better, and I hope that stays for the winter time.
Yeah, I mean the my version of that, and I think I've mentioned it before, is because that's deep. For me, it was I think it was connected with like a huge dopamine rush or release, but I love eating at home, whether I cooked it or not. But like, I just don't like eating out. I just like, we've talked about like changing your eating ritual of like just doing nothing and
Yeah, yeah,
you know whatever. But it helps when it helps for me sometimes though when it is delivery. Like obviously, like I'll just sit at home at my table, just quiet, or even with the podcast on. Like I get addicted to that because I only get to do it like once a day. I mean, I could do it at breakfast, so twice a day, but I get
yeah,
addicted to that. So sometimes like I just want it so bad that I'll end up ordering out, and uh, it won't always be the best things, but in reality, what I consider not the best things really are just fine. Um,
yeah.
but
I don't think it's that bad. It's just more of
I start to crave the rush of like I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna sit here and listen to this podcast, or sometimes I'll even turn on like an old episode of The Sopranos or something and be like, I'm gonna watch The Sopranos, and like usually The Sopranos is more dessert if I have dessert, which is not often. But there was like a time a couple weeks ago where I was eating this like coconut milk ice cream like every night, and I was like, why am I eating this shit? And
usually emotional. Like you want some emotional thing.
yeah, that's what I was saying is I think I'm addicted to the dopamine rush. So like I just was like, all right, well, I'm gonna make an acai smoothie instead. So I did that instead and like just weaned myself off. But it was a mindfulness, like you said.
Yeah.
And it
If you
gave me
listen
the same
to
sensation.
the Starette podcast, they talk about dopamine and coffee. That's all people. There's a really good article what caffeine really does to you, and it's mostly you're used to the dopamine and glutamine rush. So caffeine goes in there, blocks something, so then your dopamine and glutamine can do whatever you want. But that's long term. That's not good for you because it messes up your reward system. And then, as you know, you need more caffeine to get used to that, to get more feeling. It's a
Right.
vicious cycle. So
Adrenals, yeah.
yeah, it's it's changing the habits. Like today was a pretty big breakthrough because normally when I'm voracious, I'm gonna eat anything. And like you said, I like the ritual of coming home, making the same my lunch for tomorrow, sitting down, watching some crazy boring TV show just to get my mind off things. That's why today was tough because everybody's hitting me up on text. They want to switch times. They want to do this. I had some other obligations later on, and I was like, So today's kind of a whirlwind. I didn't get that time. So that was another reason why I didn't do the burrito because I have no time to even sit and enjoy the coma afterwards. Um, but
Yeah.
I just envisioned myself sitting there going, oh, this tastes good, and then an hour later being, oh, I should have done that. You know, like that weird psychological issue. And so I just switched
Yeah.
it. I'm like, we'll deal with it. You know, I'm gonna have the good food. And now I feel good. I have energy. I'm a little tired, but I'll be fine. Um, Whenever the heater comes on in the apartment, you get like a little head cold because it's so dry.
Yeah. Well, the changing of the seasons kind of messes with you. You get the bones feel different, the joints feel different. Yeah. The fluid in you feels different.
Yeah, that's the one thing I hate about the winter time. It's like, get over that. You have to get used to the heater. Do you have your heater, or do you have a furnace, right?
I don't know what you call it. It's some kind of heater I think it's a furnace. It's gas powered, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's water. I don't know. But yeah.
Explosion.
What's that?
Explosion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't control it. The building turns it on and off. And
When the weather dips under 50, the building has to turn on.
yeah, they started turning this thing on real fast after it started getting colder here. But it's been a pretty nice temperature lately. I mean, we've had some cold days, but you know.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird weather. It's gonna be interesting. Today was nice though.
Yeah, definitely. I know you and I were talking before the show too about how that always affects how people work out, especially with us, and just kind of how they think about their health.
You know, I'm conflicted. Like, in some ways, like of course, doing all these new exercises and all that stuff, and then thinking like what Steve Maxwell, you know, the spinal stuff that he does, how he's really big on that. That stuff is huge, man. I just can't stress how much these progressive stuff is good. That's why I'm always conflicted about winter because winter naturally means rest and regeneration, right?
Right.
But what does that mean to a trainer and his client or a person's own personal workouts? You know, a lot of people like to bulk up, right? In the winter, they like to because they know they're going to eat a lot, so they like to just lift heavy and kind of get strong and then lean out.
Right.
But as you and I know, that's not rest and regeneration at all. You're taxing your central nervous system, you know. So it's weird. I almost want to say like winter should be about mobility and fixing injuries and getting your sleep down because you're gonna sleep anyways better, right? Because usually the winter you want to sleep more. So I think winter should be the mindset should be like fixing injuries, getting mobility, eating right, like all those internal things that kind of need work because you have time to do them. You know, you're not out as much. You can get better sleep, which means you can go work out. Get your mobility in, all that stuff. Because winter only exacerbates the sitting. It only exacerbates all that resting stuff. So your rehab or getting everything back in line is actually probably the right time to do that. It's very interesting. Because I'm always conflicted about how hard should you work out in the wintertime, etc. Which doesn't mean you can't work out hard in the wintertime. I just think it means that the body's already in such a rested state that it needs to kind of go in the opposite direction, but in not such a hardcore way.
Yeah, I would look at it. I don't know. I guess maybe I have a slight. I agree with everything you said, but I would add or maybe have a slightly different viewpoint of that because you're more apt to sleep more and because you're more likely to be indoors more. That if you were to if you were to think of the winter in terms of periodization as like as if you were an athlete but just a normal person, this
Uh,
would be, like think of this as your off season if you're a normal person because for most people they're going to be out they're going to be out doing things and having fun and biking and hiking when it's warm, when it's hot outside. So that's your in season. The summer, the spring, like those are your in season months. And the winter is the off season. So like you said, I think you work on problems. I think you work on injuries and whatnot. But winter would also include the preseason, which is when you are ramping up your intensity, like to draw an analogy. So in other words, or intensity, weight and frequency wise. So the winter is a good time to work on, like you said, but then transition into a time of taking advantage of that sleep. So maybe heavy resistance training or doing things that'll kind of get you ready and healthy, for all the activities you're going
all
to
the
do once
stuff
it's
I
warm.
said, plus adding probably some muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have more time to sleep, and that's why all those meathead bodybuilders are always like, "It's bulking season."
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's individual for everybody, but I don't know. That's a good thing that somebody should write an article on, like what winter means.
Well,
For
maybe we can.
maybe we can, Mark.
Yeah. Froy and I, by the way, we're gonna be starting to you'll start to see some written literature penned by us on the internet on a website near you soon. We'll make more announcements as it's
Words.
appropriate. But
That's
Fry and I are going
good.
to start writing some more articles and getting into that aspect of things.
I
So
like to call them smarticles.
smarticles, exactly. So we'd appreciate you reading them. But we'll keep you posted on that.
Which are smart people only.
Yeah, I sent you my first one today.
Yeah, I saw it. It's pretty good.
No, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like the link. It's a good link.
That's what she said. Oh yes.
Hey now, you just alienated half the
I
female.
know. That's sorry. It's I was watching Dice Clay earlier.
How dare you? How dare you?
I know. No, but it's yeah, that's another thing when you're writing too to figure out like people's attention spans because there's a lot of really great health articles on the internet and they're too short. And then there's a lot of decent ones that are only decent because they're long, but
Yeah.
they would have been served better served to be shorter.
I would
So,
just. I think all writing is too long. I just want bullet points. I'll look up your credentials later and be like, all right, this guy knows what you're talking about.
yeah, no, I don't even mean that. I just like I like nuance. I'm the opposite of you, I guess. I like to understand the art of things. So when I
Reading another day. Done. Okay, sounds good.
whenever there's something that I'm into, I want to know about it. So like if I, for instance, read an article about I don't know whatever, like some minor aspect of like for if you're going to take the knee pain thing for example, like if I stumbled upon an article that said you need to get the hip adductors in check and make sure they're strong, well I'm going to be like, well why is that? But so many articles will just keep saying hip adductors knee pain, like it'll be all these little lines drawn between the two, but no one will really explain it, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah. I want to explain the practical. Give me like that one we found, athletes training athletes blog.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Just
Yeah,
the right amount of.
that's a great blog because it's telling you how to do something, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Gives you a program. Like, here's a program what we would do for this. I love it. I love it. It's like, okay, good. And that type of stuff leads to you only learning about, even though it's not about the knee, it's about, oh, that applies to the shoulder. Like, that applies to this. That applies to that. Like, it's, and again, everybody has conflicting theories. Like, your guy doesn't like tape. These guys like tape, you know?
Yeah.
It's
It's
pretty
not that he
interesting.
doesn't like tape, it's that certain injuries he doesn't like it for.
Yeah, well, it makes his argument makes complete sense to me. You know, it makes sense to me.
Right.
Maybe,
No.
or at the very least, it made me think. Like, yeah, you're right. It does add a new wrinkle to the system. So I'm wondering, okay, I like it for sleep. People to use it for sleep, so it's good.
Yeah, totally. Let me pose another question to you, kind of on that similar vein. This one I was kind of meditating on today and yesterday. Do you ever think to yourself, there's something funny in our industry that doesn't necessarily happen in a lot of others that are similar to us? And like kind of what I'm talking about is you'll often hear scientists uh, and people kind of who make their livelihood off science or maybe like a licensed field like a doctor, whatever it is, they know their limits. They usually are like, or they I shouldn't, and I don't mean know their limits in like a boy you better know your limits, kind of way. I mean it more like they'll be like, listen, I'm an expert on X, and this is what I'm going to tell you all about. I am passionate about X. I know other things can influence it, but you need to go talk to someone else about that because what I do is this. Like I'm a whatever, whatever you want to do. Like I am a paleontologist, or I am you know, or I am an optometrist. I know eyes. That's what I know. But if you want to go and talk to someone else about this, I don't find a lot of that in our industry because there's a lot of people. I mean, of course, that exists, but there's a lot of people who want to kind of be everything. And someone like you and I are an interesting case because we know that health and whatnot are kind of the culmination of many things. It's not any one thing. But at the same time, it's kind of hard for us to be experts on everything, you know? And you can't possibly be, you know? And I think we have a certain honesty about ourselves, but other people might not. So it's weird that like fitness is, you know, yeah, of course you have certain guys like you might know that back in the day, DeFranco was the combine guy, or Steve Clotter is the kettlebell guy, or
Yeah,
whatever it is. But at the same time, though, a lot of people try to the more lay trainer, like the one who just makes a humble living and is not a celebrity or of any notoriety. They have a million different certifications that all might or might not mean something, but they're all experts in a bunch of different things. I don't know. I was just thinking about it. It might be a strange point, but in
yeah,
science, people are always very quick to say, "Hey, I know dinosaur bones. That's what I know. I don't know people bones. I know dinosaur bones." You know what I mean?
yeah.
And you
I
don't
think
hear
it's
that in
all about
fitness.
the mindset. That's why it's so important to match up a good client with a good trainer because I could know a lot more about the body than another person, but if another person doesn't believe in my philosophy, it's not going to work.
Right.
If you believe going and working out for like a dog for 3 hours a day, like 2 hours a day, 3 times a week is going to help them lose weight, it's going to be so much of a harder work for me to tell them, oh no, this is actually health that it's almost detrimental for the both of us, you know?
Right.
Unless they're willing, once they get broken, then they're willing to come back and say, okay, this is what it really is, you know?
Right.
So I see what you're saying, and it's weird. We work in an industry where people are always trying to protect themselves. You know, oh, I didn't say that, or I didn't tell them to take ZMA, or I didn't tell them to do this.
Yeah.
And they're also, if you don't know your stuff, you could be called out pretty quick. You know,
Right.
you could be called out very quickly by somebody who's just read that book. Well, I read the book. You know, nuts aren't that good for you, or X not that good for you. So I think everybody's kind of afraid. That's why it's good to come up with your own philosophy or follow people who have good philosophies, and then just kind of okay, well, that's what works. Okay, and again, my philosophy is taken from other people, but the most important part of my philosophy is I've done it on myself. You know, we
Right.
pretty much try everything on ourselves before we admit it for anybody else or let anybody else know what we're thinking, etc., etc. It's not just about us; it's about the process, why it works, why it doesn't work, etc. Why do we do so many different diets? You know?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes those certain things aren't going to work on me that are going to work on other people, though. You
I
know?
agree. I agree. And
Yeah.
there's different mindsets about it. So it's a weird. I mean, think about it. We live in a world where CrossFit, SoulCycle, um, meditation. If you're a good trainer, meditation, CrossFit, SoulCycle, kettlebells, um, chanting. What else? Just think of the full spectrum from everything weird that that we're on the fringes of to SoulCycle. That all falls under the ambit of health, and
Or
health falls under
fitness.
the
Yeah.
ambit. Training falls under the ambit of that. You know,
Right.
how good of a trainer you are determines how far up that spectrum you can say you know things about. You know,
Yeah.
so
It's
it's a
weird because
weird thing.
you would think that because of liability and all these different he said she said type of things, you would think that that would segment people in the training community more. Like someone might just say, "Hey, I'm just a spinning instructor," or "Hey, I'm just a nutritionist," or "Hey, I'm just a really good strength coach." But instead, it has the opposite effect. I think everyone becomes a guru. But I also think that it's because a lot of things it's hard to ignore. Like in other words, a solid personal trainer at your local gym, whether it's big box or not, if even if they're not thinking on the level that Froy and I are, but are still pretty solid foundationally, they know that it's impossible to ignore that if you're eating like crap, like what you're doing in the gym is only going to help so much. So it's like, of course they're going to give you like nutritional advice. Whether or not they should is another story and a debate for another day. But you know,
Every,
they're
yeah,
inseparable.
everything's weird. Like and there's so many different trainers. Like I'm always debating as to whether do I need my clients to send me pictures of their food. I'm like, you know what? At some point, there needs to be personal responsibility. You know,
Right.
that's why I kind of always debate like, would I do that for my own business? I understand why people do it for other businesses. I don't have a problem with it, but When it's one-on-one, specifically one-on-one, I expect the person to be like, hey, you got some responsibility here. You know?
Yeah.
I always conflict when people tell me, well, my boyfriend's trainer does this, makes her send pictures. And I'm like, at that point, are you enabling? Are you not enabling? Like,
I don't know. I've done the thing, I've found that the picture thing works when you're educating someone. So
yeah,
I I've had people who are truly clueless like after we talked about how to eat and how you should think about food and they bought in completely to everything I had to say. But they were just like, "All right, so what exactly do I eat then?" And it's like even after I give them a food list, even after I give them all, they're like, "What do I eat?" And I was like, "Try this, this or this, and I want you for a week to send me pictures of what you do for each meal so we can talk about it." And that's what we did. And then after a week they didn't have to because they were still losing weight and feeling good.
nice.
I think that there's a good balance, but I totally agree with you. I wouldn't want them to do that long term because it's just I'm happy to coach you on it, but at some point I would hope that you would feel that you don't really have to because you're like, yeah, I get it. I know that steamed broccoli and sweet potato and chicken are good. Like I get it.
Yeah, it's always weird, especially when other people tell me, well, my other person's trained. I'm like, you know what? That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just personal. It's hard for me to separate what I would do versus what somebody else would do because I'm pretty extreme. So I always have to kind of go, all right, how would I do this if I was this person? It's kind of interesting. But what a panoply of conversation today.
Yeah, many different things, but hope you enjoyed.
Yeah,
And
so good. We got a break from the projects, which are kind of the same all the time for both of us.
yeah, yeah, definitely got out of a certain monotony, I guess.
Then
And,
that,
hopefully others still listening don't think that. But
yeah,
if you want to hear for anything from us, you know how to reach us. Functionalmeatheads@gmail.com or just hit us up on Twitter at funmeatheads and the website
good
functional.
articles lately on Twitter. Check them out.
Yeah, check that out. And find us on iTunes and Stitcher as always. And we will come at you next week. Sorry for I think there was a week break we had somewhere in there. I can't remember. Something like that. I think it was my family was in town or something like that. So
Yeah,
we did have a week hiatus. Sorry about that for those of you who are uh,
Die Hard
the diehards, the regular listeners. I know there's a few. There's not many. They're probably our only listeners, but
isn't alienated.
yes, exactly.
Now, tune in
Because
next
I'm
week.
so rude.
We'll have a good one next week. Not that this one was bad, but we'll have another break from our normal traditional muscle gym talk.
Yeah, because we're so full of that. But anyway,
Anyways,
you know the drill, everyone.
watch regular show.
That's right. And take care. Why not brush your hair? It's time for the woo off.
Woo, 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 woo. Oh, we actually have.